সুদূর মার্কিন যুক্তরাষ্ট্র থেকে পেয়ে গেছি মিস্টার পার্থ ব্যানার্জিকে, আর সঙ্গে পেয়ে গেছি আমাদের গেস্ট ন্যান্সিকে। ওনার একটু পরিচয় আমরা আগে প্রথমেই দিয়ে দিতে চাইছি। উনি একজন পরিবেশবিদ, পরিবেশ আন্দোলনের সঙ্গে যুক্ত, এবং টিচার অ্যাসোসিয়েশনের সঙ্গে উনি লিডারশিপে রয়েছেন। সেই সঙ্গে ফুড ফর অল এই একটা মুভমেন্ট ওনারা মানে ওখানে মার্কিন যুক্তরাষ্ট্রে করছেন, তার সামনের সারিতে উনি রয়েছেন। আমরা ওনার কাছে জেনে নেব মার্কিন যুক্তরাষ্ট্রের বর্তমান পরিস্থিতি এবং সেখানে আন্দোলনের গতি প্রকৃতি কি। এই এই ইন্টারভিউটা সঞ্চালনা করবেন পার্থদার হাতে আমি তুলে দিচ্ছি আজকের দিনের ডিসকাশন। মিস্টার পার্থ।
Okay, thank you, Shankar. So we are very much honored to have Professor Dr. Nancy Romer on this show. Let me just introduce Nancy to your audience, because it is actually, we are highly privileged that she has found the time to talk to us on camera today. Nancy Romer is a very well-known food and climate justice activist, and also a teacher union leader. She has worked as a professor here in Brooklyn for a very long time, and now she is retired. She has taught for many years, decades as a matter of fact. And now that she has retired, but she is such a wonderful person, and my wife and I have known her for a very long time. It has been really a privilege for us, as myself and my wife Mukti, to have known her, and particularly to know the kind of work she has done in the area of food and climate justice movement. So today's coronavirus crisis is a great, grave crisis. And I have talked to you and your audience about the situation here in America, which is beyond belief, with so many thousands of deaths and infections and loss of jobs and things like that. And but the problem is that most people do not really understand the direct relationship between this crisis and the environmental crisis, the climate crisis, and something that mainstream media does not explain to us very well. And nobody can explain it better than Nancy Romer. So I'm going to ask Nancy some questions, but before that, I would let Nancy speak to introduce herself and her work, and then we'll start the conversation in English. And আমি মাঝে মাঝে বাংলাতে অনুবাদও করে দেব.
Yeah.
Yes, Nancy, please.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me. And Partha, you know, my heart is with you. I love you and Mukti so much. And I want to say thank you to the people of Calcutta who have been so welcoming and generous in my visit there, and have taught me so much. When I traveled through India, I could see the incredible dedication of the people, but particularly the rural farmers, the women farmers, but also the tremendous burden that that climate change is placing on farmers and on the general population. So I learned an enormous amount in my visit to India, and I hope to carry that with me and out in the world. So right now, clearly the world is struggling with this pandemic, and it will kill off a lot of people. And hopefully it will give us an opportunity in this tragedy to look at the bigger picture. What do we need to do in the future to minimize the impact of what will be multiple pandemics? What can we do to avoid the greatest challenge to our planet and to human life, which will be runaway climate change? And I think one of the uniting aspects of both COVID-19 and climate change is that the importance of listening to the scientists early on, to be able to look squarely at what human life is facing and respond to that crisis immediately, not way down the road. With COVID-19, we see that it's much, much harder in a country like the United States, where the leadership does not believe in science. It only believes in politics, that you can't control Mother Nature with politics. It has to be with the science. And we're seeing the same thing in terms of runaway climate change. All of the latest reports have told us we have about till 2030 to transform our economy away from fossil fuels and to renewable energy. And if we don't do that, we will have runaway climate change where we can't pull it back. And there will not be solutions in 2050. We will not be able to shelter at home. We will not be able to have a vaccine. We will not be able to control it, and it will control us. So I'm so happy to have the opportunity to speak about the importance of learning from COVID-19 and listening to the scientists, changing our economy away from fossil fuels toward renewable energy, and in the process, create more of a social welfare state that will take care of our people, because we've learned from COVID-19 that the poorest and the sickest among us are the ones that we rely on for our essential services and are the people that are going to infect others unless we take care of them. The weakest link destroys the chain. And so we must take care of everyone in this society to have a safe and decent life. Otherwise, the whole society is in jeopardy.
Okay, Nancy. So I have to, first of all, I really would like to thank you enormously for taking the time to explain to us the situation, especially on the subject of climate change and global warming, and the need for us to move away from a fossil fuel based economy. I'm going to translate what you just said in Bangla in brief, because there are many people who are watching who probably do not understand English so well.
Mania is from West Bengal. That's why the very
Yeah,
well
this is
conversation
not,
should go.
yeah,
No
I'm going to
problem.
translate just a little bit, not the whole thing, but the summary of it. And then we'll come back to questions, Nancy.
Do
If
you
that's
want
okay.
me in the future? Sure, but in the future, do you want me to have shorter statements that you can translate? Is that
Yeah,
easier? Okay.
yeah, that would be better. Yeah.
That's not needed.
Okay,
That's not
thanks.
needed. You can
Oh, okay. So he says
speak
that's
Okay.
well,
universal language. No issue.
most people I think the people who are watching it, they almost all of them understand English, but there might be a little bit of a problem to understand, like the American accent, because they're not used to it that much. So yeah. So even though you have practically no accent.
I have a
I
New
mean,
York accent.
All word has been
it's very
understandable. No
clear.
issue.
It's very clear. Mukti, my wife Mukti, was saying the same thing, that Nancy speaks so clearly and so
Yeah,
articulately, there should not be any
yes,
problem.
true. Yes, true.
Yeah. Anyway, so ন্যান্সি যে প্রফেসর ন্যান্সি রোমার যেটা বললেন আমাদের এক্ষুনি, সেটা আমি সংক্ষেপে একটুখানি অনুবাদ করে দিচ্ছি বাংলায়। হ্যাঁ, মোটামুটি উনি যেটা বললেন সেটা হচ্ছে কোভিড-19 আজকে বেশ কয়েকটা জিনিস উনি বলেছেন। নাম্বার 1 হচ্ছে কোভিড-19 আজকে সবচাইতে যারা পুয়ার, দরিদ্র শ্রেণী, ভালনারেবল, সিক, তাদেরকেই আক্রমণ করছে সবচাইতে বেশি। এবং তারা এই যে একটা ভয়ঙ্কর যে পরিবেশ ধ্বংস চলছে, তারা পৃথিবী জুড়ে শাসক শ্রেণী যে পরিবেশ ধ্বংসের খেলায় মেতে উঠেছে, তার শিকার হয়েছে সবচাইতে বেশি। সুতরাং আজকে যদি কোভিড-19 ক্রাইসিসটা কেটে যাওয়ার পরেও এই এনভায়রনমেন্টাল ক্রাইসিস, ক্লাইমেট ক্রাইসিসটা কিন্তু থেকেই যাবে। আমরা যদি সেইটার জন্য কনস্ট্যান্টলি কাজ না করি, তাহলে 2030 সালের মধ্যে যদি আমরা সম্পূর্ণভাবে এই জীবাশ্ম ফসিল ভিত্তিক অর্থনীতি থেকে সরে এসে যদি আমরা গ্রিন এনার্জি, রিনিউয়েবল এনার্জি ভিত্তিক অর্থনীতিতে নিজেদেরকে রূপান্তরিত করতে না পারি, তাহলে কিন্তু এরপরে সংকট আরো অনেক বেশি তীব্র হবে এবং তার থেকে বাঁচার কোনো রাস্তাই আমাদের জানা থাকবে না। So this is basically in summary what she just said. So I'm going to ask with Nancy's permission and Shankar's permission, I'm going to ask Nancy one question at a time, and then I will try to translate again in Bangla the summary of her comments and her answers, if that's okay with you. So,
Yeah, it's
first
fine.
of all, yeah, Shankar. So, first of all, Nancy, could you please tell us a little bit about your experience to visit Kolkata and India and Sri Lanka, and then also Latin America, where you spent a long time, particularly in relation to what is going on there on the climate and environmental justice movement?
Okay, thank you. That's a very big landscape to cover, but I will
Yeah.
try. So most of my trip to India, it was in Calcutta and southern India, primarily Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Kerala, and then in Sri Lanka. But in all those places, I tried to learn from farmer organizations to understand the impact of climate change and people's organizations on the lives of Indians and Sri Lankans. Similarly, in Latin America, where I've traveled extensively in Bolivia and also in Honduras, Guatemala, Mexico, um, uh, Peru, Ecuador, and Venezuela, Colombia. So
Wow.
I've done a lot of traveling around, trying to learn from farmers mostly and organizers. What are they doing to deal with the day-to-day reality of climate change? Because while people in cities often can have an understanding of increased temperatures and difficult storms, the impact of climate change on farmers is experienced every single day, and their entire lives, their work lives, are organized around nature and therefore climate change. And
Yes.
what I've learned is that people's organizations lift them up, not only in terms of resilience against climate change, but also the improvement of their lives and their personal and social positions.
Okay.
One question
So,
I want to add it. If you see in Latin American context, there is a Bolivarian economy around some country in Latin America. So what you will find the positive in a Bolivian economy and other economy? What you will find the difference between that economy and that economy?
I think, yeah.
Bolivian economy is in place in Venezuela in the era of Hugo Chavez.
That's a very big question. Looking at the economies of various areas of the world. I mean, I think that when governments are progressive, like it was in Bolivia for a period of about 15 years, then and also a government, for example, that was brought into power by peasants, campesinos, in Bolivia. And similarly with Chavez in Venezuela, when you see that the people's movements have either coordinated with or brought to power the national leadership, then the policies are very pro-farmer and pro-poor people. So for the period in which, for example, Evo Morales was functioning as president, you could see tremendous improvement. They cut, for example, the extreme poverty rate and the poverty rate in half in a 15-year period. Now that's remarkable. And I've visited a lot of rural campesino communities in Bolivia that were unbelievably poor, shockingly poor to me, and yet their lives have been improved dramatically. Now there were a lot of shortcomings too, and I'm not defending Evo Morales across the board, but you can see when a government is deeply connected to poor people and brought to power, supported in power by poor people, that their policies are going to lift up the bottom and lift up the whole society, in fact, and hopefully improve the environment. That is unfortunately not what happened with Evo Morales. He did not protect the environment, and neither did Chavez. So there's always that contradiction between economic development and the environment. We must come to an understanding of improving the economy through non-extractive industries. And that's been a very hard lesson to learn and to implement.
ওকে, তাহলে আমি একটুখানি বাংলায় বলে দিচ্ছি। ন্যান্সি ভারতে, কলকাতায়, দক্ষিণ ভারতে, তামিলনাড়ু এবং মহারাষ্ট্র, তারপরে কেরালা এবং শ্রীলঙ্কায় এক্সটেন্সিভ ট্রাভেলের অভিজ্ঞতা আছে, এবং বিশেষ করে ল্যাটিন আমেরিকাতে বিভিন্ন দেশে ন্যান্সির থাকার এবং কাজ করার অভিজ্ঞতা আছে। এই মুহূর্তে ন্যান্সি বলিভিয়া এবং ভেনেজুয়েলার কথা বললেন, যেখানে উনি বললেন যে বলিভিয়া এবং ভেনেজুয়েলা দুই জায়গাতেই ইভো মোরালেস বলিভিয়াতে এবং ভেনেজুয়েলাতে হিউগো শাভেজ, তারা দুজনেই গরিবদের জন্য কাজ করার অনেক বেশি চেষ্টা করেছেন, এবং তারা একটা জনমুখী একটা অর্থনীতি, কৃষকদের জন্য উন্নতির জন্য অর্থনীতি তারা তৈরি করতে পেরেছিলেন। কিন্তু অ্যাট দ্য সেম টাইম সেই সময় তারা ক্লাইমেট এর দিকে তেমন বেশি নজর দেননি, যার জন্য যে উন্নতিটা ক্লাইমেটের দিকে, এনভায়রনমেন্টের দিকে হওয়ার কথা ছিল, সেটা সেখানে তেমন ভাবে হয়নি। এই জিনিসটাও আমাদেরকে মাথায় রাখতে হবে। আচ্ছা, এবারে আই এম গোয়িং টু কাম ব্যাক টু ন্যান্সি, because this is such an important discussion, and believe it or not, many people in India, especially in West Bengal, they are very much aware of what is going on in many different parts of the world. This is like something that I know from my personal knowledge. People in Bengal and Kerala, as you know, they are much more progressive minded than many other parts of India, and they understand what is going on in terms of, capitalistic destruction of the ordinary people and their lives. They are very, very familiar with what is going on. But still, this is such an important discussion today, because what is happening in India under the Modi government is so strikingly similar, not the same, but strikingly similar to what is happening in America and what is happening in countries like Brazil, for example. In Brazil, this Bolsonaro has openly announced that he is going to cut down a vast swath of the Amazon rainforest, and that is going to cause havoc to the environment and also going to destroy the indigenous people and their thousands of years of livelihoods. And in India also, a very similar thing is happening. They have, and in America, we know what's going on under Trump. So can you connect these dots, and how ordinary people can come together and work and be aware of the destruction that is happening to the environment and to the climate?
Well, I think that we are facing, this predicted challenge between, or contest between, barbarism and at least social democracy. I think that we are at the limits of the planet being able to be raped over and over and over again, which is what capitalism has done. Capitalism has seen nature and all natural resources as just an opportunity to grab and to use for its own profits. And that has gotten us to the point now where we cannot do that anymore, or we will be destroying the possibility of human life and much other life, many other species' lives on the planet. But certainly human life will not be able to continue if we don't change what our relationship to nature is. So I think that right now, as you listed, Modi, Bolsonaro, Trump are part, and others are part of this axis of, I don't want to say evil, although it certainly feels that way, of destruction. And the way that they get their popular support is through nativism and chauvinism, and an attempt to heighten the differences between people and to rally their troops to support a more fascistic direction. And unfortunately, neoliberalism, which really was the practice that started intensely in 1980 with Thatcher and Reagan. They've laid the groundwork. This idea that corporate profit will raise all boats, which of course is a complete lie. That's not what happened. But it meant great corporate profits and control from the top all over the world. So given that situation, the Trumps and Bolsonaros and Modis ride in and say, well, now that we've got these great inequalities, we're going to blame people at the bottom, people with darker skin, people from other countries, and we're going to save what we can for the wealthy or even the middle class of our countries. So the choice in front of us is to support that, or to support a government and a politic that can support the great majority of people, that can create a social welfare state, to provide protection for the environment so we can continue to live. And that's the first and foremost, but also to provide living wages and health care and a basic social safety net so that individuals, families, communities can survive and thrive. If we don't do that, we will not be able to manage under the very harsh conditions that are right in front of us with the coming climate crisis.
Okay. তাহলে আমি একটুখানি সংক্ষেপে ট্রান্সলেট করে দিচ্ছি। এই যে আমি যে প্রশ্নটা করেছিলাম যে আমেরিকাতে ট্রাম্প এবং আমাদের দেশের মোদি এবং ব্রাজিলের বলসোনারো এদের গভর্নমেন্টের যে কার্য পদ্ধতিটা অনেকটা সিমিলার, সেই সিমিলারিটির মধ্যে একটা বড় জিনিস হচ্ছে যে তারা কেবলমাত্র সমাজের সবচাইতে যারা ধনিক শ্রেণী 1%, তাদের জন্যই বেসিক্যালি তাদের কাজের ধারাটা বেশি, এবং সাধারণ মানুষ যে ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত হচ্ছে সে বিষয়ে তাদের বিন্দুমাত্র মাথা ব্যথা নেই। আর তাদের পরিবেশ ধ্বংস, তাদের জীবিকা ধ্বংস, সেই নিয়েও তাদের কোনো মাথা ব্যথা নেই, যদিও তারা মানুষকে বোঝানোর চেষ্টা করছে যে তারা সাধারণ মানুষের জন্য কাজ করছে। কিন্তু দেখা যাচ্ছে যে থ্যাচার এবং রেগানের 1980 সালের পর থেকে সারা পৃথিবী জুড়ে এই যে নিউ লিবারাল পুঁজিবাদী ব্যবস্থা শুরু হয়েছে, তাতে কেবলমাত্র সমাজের টপ অফ দ্য ইকোনমি যারা, তারাই কেবলমাত্র আরো বেশি ধনী হয়েছে, আর বাকিরা সমস্ত আরো বেশি দরিদ্র থেকে দরিদ্রতর হয়েছে। সুতরাং কোনো গভর্নমেন্ট, কোনো সরকার, কোনো শাসক শ্রেণী যদি সাধারণ মানুষের জন্য, গরিব মানুষের জন্য কাজ না করে, আমাদের চয়েস হচ্ছে আমরা কি তাদের সমর্থন করব, না এমন কোনো একটা পরিবর্তিত একটা রাজনৈতিক সামাজিক সিস্টেম তৈরি করার চেষ্টা করব যেখানে সাধারণ মানুষের হাতে, গরিব মানুষের হাতে ক্ষমতা যায় বেশি। এটা উনি
I want to add one question, Nancy. The right-wing forces are much more increasing day by day. They will create the environment that nationalism, regionalism, that kind of things will create some environment among the electorate. So what is your view? Why that kind of forces is re-elected in many parts of the world? What is your view?
Well, I think it's different in a lot of places, and the cultural and historical differences are very important. So I don't want to just say this is what's happening in the world. But I do think that some of the important forces are sort of we're reaching the end of nature. We're reaching the end of our resources, and we're seeing that there has to be an ending. I'm in the middle of reading my friend Greg Grandin's newly Pulitzer Prize winner book, The End of the Myth, and I recommend. Can you see it? Yeah, I recommend it. It's From the Frontier to the Border Wall in the Mind.
Can you please mention the name of the author?
Yes, Greg Grandin, and whoops, there it is. Yeah, and Greg and I were activists at Brooklyn College together. He was a student and I was a faculty member, and he's totally brilliant. He's now in the history department at Yale. And basically, I think the very intelligent argument he makes is that as we reach the end of expansion in capitalism, then there's a closing of the ranks. There's a sense of, okay, if we can't expand, we have to hold on to what we have. And the way we hold on to what we have is to demonize people that are different from us and to demonize the environment. It's almost as if the environment is the enemy. And we can do whatever we want because we're protecting this inner group that that has always been in a certain amount of control, but now is facing sort of the end of this era of expansion. And there needs to be a kind of elevation of the base to say, well, we're the best, we're the whitest, we're the powerful. We are, and it's not just the rich. It's a lot of working class people who really don't understand their own oppression and don't really understand what's happening to their families, because their families are very, I mean, this is true in the United States. I'm not sure if this is true as much in India.
Very similar, very similar.
But
If
their
you define
families are not
if you define the development, we can see in Mexico the Chiapas tribal peoples have been affected by the capital investment, and their development only what I say similarities with the urbanizations. But what about the tribal livelihood? What is your view? Because you are in climate movement, so their livelihood also in danger. How will define their crisis?
Well, I'm not sure that I understood you perfectly. I'm sorry to say.
Urbanizations. If you see the capital investment in urban development, but that will affect in many parts of the world. I can give you the one example in Mexico that the Chiapas tribal peoples are much more affected by the urban development, and their livelihood has been destroyed and devastated. They are taking in the road for their movement. So, in a climate movement, how will make a support to them? How will make you support?
Well, I don't really know a lot about Chiapas. I have visited Chiapas and Oaxaca more than Chiapas. In both places, they are, but probably more so in Chiapas. They're both mostly indigenous peoples. More so again in Chiapas than in Oaxaca. They have a very strong communal land structure. They have a lot of communal governance where people, you're a member of the community, you're required to participate. It's not like, oh, maybe I'll go to a meeting or maybe I'll help out. No, you must. And that's true in a lot of rural places. And certainly true in Bolivia. You must participate. I think that there's been a lot more survival because of that. And I think in Chiapas, of course, with the ESLN, I think that they've been extremely successful in educating people and politicizing people. But in visiting San Cristobal, which is the capital of Chiapas, capitalism is thriving. So there are a lot of contradictions there. Their agriculture is also thriving as it is in Oaxaca, but the cities are capitalistic completely, and there's a lot of conflict between the people's movements and the governments. And even with Obrador, AMLO, who the president of Mexico, who the people struggled for years, for decades, to get AMLO in, to get Obrador in. And Obrador has been a tremendous disappointment to so many people. He has not been able to move toward a stronger social democracy. And I might add, having COVID-19 in the middle of it doesn't make it easier to advance on social programs. He started out with an attempt to move social programs, but he's been stopped in his tracks for right now. So I do think that there are ways of maintaining the local cultural traditions of communalism that exist really all over the world, and holding on to those as the strength. I think that for indigenous peoples all over the world, and that's one of the great powers of indigenous peoples and why they really do need to be in leadership of progressive movements, because they have held on to their traditions of communalism and care for the group over the individual. And that's where we have to be now.
Okay, Nancy, that brings me to a question that I've been thinking of asking you for a long time, and you have been following these developments, in many parts of the world for quite a while. I'm just going to draw your attention to one disaster that happened today in India. This is this city called Vizag in South India.
Visakhapatnam, southern state.
Yeah, most people, I mean, the Western name is Vizag, but it is actually Visakhapatnam. And there is a huge, remember Union Carbide back in 1984? There is a huge, a similar explosion in a factory in Vizag today, killing, dozens of people, and God knows how many people were actually killed, and thousands of people are gravely injured because this is like a very serious toxic gas that came out of the factory. So that is one thing that is happening in a place like India almost on a daily basis, small scale, large scale. And then, of course, you know about what is going on with Monsanto and the farmer suicide in India. And these are like such huge disasters. But, over a long period of time, corporate media have managed to sideline these news as if these are not really important anymore. Let's move on and talk about prosperity, talk about development. And meanwhile, millions and millions of people, poor people, both at factories and also on farms, are dying and killing themselves, and their families are being destroyed. But people are not being able to know the underlying reasons behind these disasters, because just like here in America, where 74,000 people have died because of coronavirus, mainstream media are not explaining the reasons. They are only giving us the sensational side of the story. What is your comment on that?
Well, I think that one of the things the media learned from the Vietnam War is if you don't cover it, people don't respond to it. So yeah. I think that that's
I call it journalism of exclusion.
Absolutely, well said. And
only one journalist will give us the truth. That is John Pilger.
There are some, but we are talking about corporate media, mainstream media.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, and I think your point is really important. There are these excellent media outlets all over the world that are the people's outlets. That is, they cover the people's struggles. They cover these tragedies. They stick with the story. And I think this is something that's important to augment, as you said, Partha. That a news outlet like NPR, National Public Radio, will cover something once, but then they won't continue the thread.
Yeah.
Of course, they're almost completely supported by the fossil fuel industry. But they don't want to not cover these things that are important, but they don't follow the story. So you never really learn anything. You just learn that something happened. And I think that's the key part, that we have to not only cover these tragedies, but explain why. And I don't know if this is true in India. I know it's true in the United States. The American people are so poorly educated, and not just in school, but as they move through their lives, through the corporate media, they're so poorly educated that they don't have the tools to really question what's going on. And so they don't. But I think that all of these tragedies are a function of the overreach and destructive behaviors of the corporate elite. They don't care who they kill. They really don't. They think that everyone's dispensable. I think that the recent coverage that some of the mass media in the United States have had for the meatpacking industry is a really important lesson. That that in the United States, the Centers for Disease Control have historically been leaders in protecting public health, not only in the United States but globally. Now, under the Trump administration, the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, have been completely silenced. All of their guidelines are now suggestions, they're not requirements. And Trump has opened up the meat packing plants, which is, not so different from these explosions, because there have been massive explosions of COVID-19 in these plants. And yet the meatpacking industry is doing absolutely, it doesn't have to do anything. Some of the plants are doing some things to check the workers. But for Trump, the idea that meat represents, and meat is such an exploitive industry to begin with, but meat represents the power of this refusal to accept nature, the refusal to accept the collective power and importance of all of our people. It's about the people who have power that count, and we want our meat. As they say about, the environmentalists, they're going to take away our hamburgers. Tragedy to not have your hamburger. We'd rather not have life if we can't have hamburgers. And the forcing of all of these very poor, mostly immigrant, many undocumented workers that come from very, very poor families that are completely dependent upon their livelihood, that they are forcing these workers to go to work every day under possible arrest if they don't do it. And this is what's going on all over the world. People have to understand that the greed of capitalism and the desire to control nature is going to be the undoing of our species. And we must stop it. And the only way we can stop it is with social democracy. And as we say in the United States, a Green New Deal, a way of transforming this society. That's what's so brilliant about the Green New Deal. It's a way of transforming this society, not just in terms of the environment, but in terms of the economy and the social and political life of our people.
Okay, great. I think that Shankar is probably going to run out of time very soon, but and I did not even want to translate everything that you said, Nancy, in Bangla simultaneously, because they're so important, and I did not want to interrupt the way you were speaking passionately as you always do. So if people have কারোর যদি কোনো প্রশ্ন থাকে আমাদেরকে পরে কমেন্টে লিখে জানাবেন, right, send your questions in the comment section and we'll try to answer them as we go on, both in Bangla and English. No problem, just send your questions. যদি কিছু বুঝতে অসুবিধা হয়ে থাকে, just let us know and we'll try to explain that to you in Bangla. Okay, I just want to ask one maybe if I may, one final question, and that is the question of Bernie Sanders and his politics. And you and I have both supported strongly Bernie Sanders, and we have always thought, and my wife Mukti has been like the strongest possible supporter of Bernie Sanders. And we were very, very disappointed both in 2016 and this year when, like he was sort of like very cleverly excluded from the people in power. So in the absence of such a very powerful alternative force in the political scenario, what do you think we can do to sustain this base that Bernie Sanders and his people have, such as yourself, have created?
Well, I agree that it's a tragedy that the corporate media and the Democratic Party leadership basically kneecapped and killed off Bernie. And also, I think that there were many
Yeah,
problems, of course,
contradictions. Yeah,
um, not only in the campaign, but in the way that the corporate media just never gave him a chance. Um, and I think that COVID-19 was, the death blow to the Bernie campaign, because it was framed as we need to go back to something that we're familiar with. We're scared, so we have to go back to what we're familiar with, and that's what Biden is. I don't think that Biden has the wherewithal to be able to lead effectively. And I hope he can beat Trump, but I don't know. Nobody knows right now. And we don't know if he'll even last through the convention, which is probably going to be in August. And that's why it's important that Bernie get as many delegates as possible. Uh, if the Bernie campaign it does not continue, there still are strong threads that move through his campaign, like Democratic Socialists of America, of which I am a member. And that organization is now moving toward more and more on the ground organizing of Amazon workers, of Instagram workers, of meatpacking workers, of all of these different exploited worker sectors, and doing a lot of mutual aid. So doing the organizing around rent strikes. Now, I don't mean to say that Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, has done all that organizing. No. These are existing organizing platforms that are going on, but that DSA is taking the lessons from the Bernie campaign and applying them. And applying the labor power. There are probably 70 to 80,000 members of DSA in the United States, and it's growing because people see the need for social democracy. So I think that organization is moving through. I think Indivisible is moving forward. I think Justice Democrats are moving forward. I think a lot of the work is going to be happening on a more local level. And we'll have to see what happens. One of the things that we're facing right now is that we don't know what the next few months are going to hold. And we have to stay active. We have to stay committed. And right now, there's a lot that we can do on the phone. It's an interesting thing, not just electorally, but in terms of building movements. Used to be phone calling, people would hang up on you. Now that's not the case. That's what we have in front of us. That's what we have to use. There also are large coalitions, for example, the Budget Justice Coalition that's based in New York, but has national reach. The People's COVID-19 Response Network, which is based in Chicago, but also has national reach. And there are many more that are evolving right now. These are efforts that will move progressive politics forward. We don't know the exact form, and they may not be federal elections, but they're important grassroots movements, and we cannot give up. We don't have the right to give up. We owe it to our ancestors. We owe it to our children and grandchildren to keep the fight. We cannot give up on our species or our planet.
I have a questions. How do you find the people's reactions regarding the mismanagement in a COVID-19 case? Because many died in front of the medical practitioners, and health workers also affected. So, what is your view when you are interacting with the people through phone or any other helplines? What's their view regarding the mismanagement of the government?
Well, I think that it depends upon the media that you're watching. If you're watching Fox News, you think, oh, Trump is doing a great
But how
job.
you will find how you will find the real picture from the peoples of USA?
It's very hard to know what the people are saying. I mean, the people, because we're all in our bubbles. I mean, I know what my people are saying. They're horrified. They're frightened. I mean, it is just a horrifying thought that in the middle of the worst environmental destruction that is COVID-19, destruction of our people, right? That right-wing forces are so powerful, and they're so disregarding of human life. They don't care. You know, if you're a fetus, they care about you alive. But if you're an actual born human being, they don't give a damn. And you know, that's the contradiction. If you're in jail, they'll let you rot in jail. If you're an elder in a nursing home, who cares? You're too expensive anyway.
Yeah.
So you know, their sense of life is so bizarre. It's hard to track it. But I think
some news has come. There's a many unclaimed body has been found on the road and in hospital. Why the unclaimed body has been found? Because I don't know why the unclaimed body. Because they are the registered in hospital.
Well, they're piling up the bodies everywhere. You know, they have these. I know in my neighborhood in Brooklyn, I'm not there now. I'm hiding out in Vermont because I'm 73 and my husband's 79, and you know, we're the elders. So we're
you have to take care of yourself. Stay safe.
Well, I've doubled my workload in terms of Zoom calls and follow up work. So I'm not sitting out and just looking at the trees. But but what I'm hearing is, and what I'm seeing from the media is that there are these massive refrigerator trucks right outside of all the hospitals, just piling up the bodies, and you know, it's horrifying. And yet they go into some of the nursing homes and they see that there is a room that they're saving for dead bodies, and you know, it's a sense of destruction that we really haven't seen in our communities. So I think there's a horror and an understanding that there is no strategy to get rid of COVID-19 or to manage it. There's absolutely no strategy. All there is a desire to, quote, open the economy, end quote, and so that the economy won't be so bad in November when Trump has to be up for election again. And the stupidity of it is that we're just going to go, by November, we should be in the second wave of this. That's what all the scientists are saying. So we should be right in the middle of the second wave. And Trump, because he doesn't believe in science and doesn't listen to scientists and doesn't read anything, we have an almost illiterate president, that he seems to feel that if you just open the economy, that things will be better. And that's completely false. So I think
during the lockdown period is going on, how many people is losing their job? Or what about the percentage if you compare with the total workforce in USA?
I don't have the numbers on me, but it's millions.
We have talked about it already. By government estimates, 30 million people have lost their jobs. This is just based on how many people filed for unemployment insurance. This does not include the hundreds of thousands of people who did not file, or the undocumented immigrants, the huge workforce. So this is outside of that. This is only 30 million people. They have filed for unemployment, and today's New York Times is saying that 2.5 million people have been added to the list just in the past few days. So it is also 32 million people.
Yeah.
Which is
also, I'm sorry, go on, Partha.
No, আমি বাংলায় বলছি 3 কোটি 20 লক্ষ মানুষ শুধু সরকারি হিসেব অনুযায়ী আনএমপ্লয়েড হয়ে বসে আছে।
Then also don't forget all of these, quote, you know, the essential workers. The essential workers are being forced to work, and generally pretty low pay. And so many of them are in jeopardy. And so while they're employed, they're working in a sense of terror. I have a very good friend who I actually met in the 2016 Bernie campaign, who's a transit worker in the New York City subways and has 2 young kids. He's scared to death, and he can't come home to his kids because he doesn't want to spread the virus. And he's absolutely petrified every single day. He's a healthy young man in his late 30s, and he's African American, and he's scared to death. So he has to work. It's not even a matter of, okay, I'll get fired, I'll find another job. The family doesn't eat. There isn't a social safety net for people to defy these orders. So there's unemployment, and then there's massive forced employment that is creating an enormous amount of misery because they're not taking care of those people, those essential workers.
Any
So
government
I think
interventions is there? Any government intervention? Even in Democrat senator in many cities are there. They are not raising any voice.
they're saying thank you. Oh, our heroes, they're so wonderful. We say thank you. And that's fine. I'm glad they're saying thank you, but that's not enough. They need to give them hazard pay. They need to give them paid sick leave, much more sick leave, family leave. If family members are sick, they need to be testing them every single day. And they're not doing any of this. So poor people and people who are working class people who really are on the edge are just being forced to serve the rest of us in a way that is so cruel. And while it's great to say thank you, the best way to say thank you is materially,
right,
and not just with these. I love these ads on TV. They say, "Oh, in this time of COVID-19, we thank you." Well, talk is cheap. Let's see some real policy change that supports the people, the workers, the families, the communities that we're all living in, instead of just an empty thank you.
এইটা আমি একটুখানি I want to translate this part
You have to
because
say in
it's
Bengali. Yeah.
so important. ন্যান্সি যেটা বলছেন সেটা আমি তো বহুদিন ধরে বলে আসছি যে এখানে মানুষ কিভাবে মানে পোকামাকড়ের মতো মরে যাচ্ছে এবং গরিব লোকেরা মরে যাচ্ছে, তাদের জন্য বড় বড় রেফ্রিজারেটরে তাদের বডি রেখে দেওয়া হচ্ছে এবং এইভাবে মানুষ এখানে মরে যাচ্ছে। এবং ন্যান্সি এখন ট্রানজিট ওয়ার্কারের কথা বললেন যে 30 বছর বয়সের একজন আফ্রিকান আমেরিকান ট্রানজিট ওয়ার্কার, তিনি তার ফ্যামিলির কাছে যেতে পারছেন না, বাচ্চাদের কাছে যেতে পারছেন না, কারণ তার ভয় সবসময় যে তার থেকে তারাও সংক্রমিত হবে। তো এইভাবে মানুষ বেঁচে আছে। আর যে সমস্ত মানুষ অসংখ্য ট্রানজিট ওয়ার্কার সংক্রমিত হয়েছেন, মারা গেছেন, তাদের জন্য যে যারা কাজ করছেন আজকে স্যাক্রিফাইস করছেন এই অবস্থার মধ্যে বাইরে বেরিয়ে যাদেরকে কাজ করতেই হচ্ছে, এসেনশিয়াল ওয়ার্কার্স যাদেরকে বলা হয়, তাদের জন্য ওই বড় বড় পলিটিশিয়ানদের থ্যাংক ইউ বলা ছাড়া আর কোন রকম বিশেষ কিছু বলার তাদের নেই। কিন্তু এই থ্যাংক ইউ বলা ভালো, নিশ্চয়ই তাদের থ্যাংক ইউ বলতে হবে, উই মাস্ট থ্যাংক দেম, কিন্তু দ্যাট ইজ নট এনাফ। তার পাশে গিয়ে সরকারকে দাঁড়াতে হবে, রাষ্ট্রকে দাঁড়াতে হবে, তাদের বিপদে তাদেরকে সিক লিভ দিতে হবে, তাদেরকে মেডিকেল লিভ দিতে হবে, তাদেরকে ইন্স্যুরেন্স দিয়ে সাহায্য করতে হবে, তাদের ফুড অ্যাসিস্ট্যান্স দিতে হবে, তবেই সেই থ্যাংক ইউটা সত্যিকারের যুক্তিযুক্ত থ্যাংক ইউ হবে। কেবলমাত্র জাস্ট ইউ আর সাচ সো ওয়ান্ডারফুল, ইউ আর ডুইং সাচ গ্রেট ওয়ার্ক অ্যান্ড উই থ্যাংক ইউ, দ্যাট রিয়েলি ডাজ নট গো ফার এনাফ, এটা উনি বলছেন আর কি। তো আজকে এই আই ডু নট ওয়ান্ট টু take too much of your time. Nancy, you have already spent a long 1 hour with us in spite of you're in the midst of your busy schedule and your teaching assignment. But again, on behalf of Shankar and this wonderful channel that they have created for the working class people of West Bengal, I really want to thank you.
It will cover world also. It will cover world also. We will bring is some essence that where the people have been spending their life in a heartless economy.
But I hope that you can come back to another show later sometime. And I would let Shankar thank you one more time before we perhaps adjourn this conversation today.
I also thanks to Nancy. Will make you again make any appointment, another appointment with different issues. It is really thankful to you for coming to our small news portal. If you have any last message for our viewers, please convey.
I want to say thank you so much for this opportunity and this interesting conversation and the opportunity to speak to the people of West Bengal. I really appreciate that so much, because you have a wonderful tradition and culture and history that is so remarkable and needs to be known by the world in even more than it is now. I also want to say that we cannot give up the struggle. We must continue the struggle. We cannot give up on our species or our planet. And we have to retake it from the rich and the powerful now and share the wealth and share the power in order to survive. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
থ্যাংক ইউ
পার্থদা, আমরা এখন একদম শেষ পর্যায়ে।
হ্যাঁ,
ব্রিফলি বলো, আশার আলো দেখা যাচ্ছে মার্কিন যুক্তরাষ্ট্রে?
মার্কিন যুক্তরাষ্ট্রে আসার আলো দেখা যাচ্ছে না, এবং সত্যি কথা বলতে এই সমস্যাটা যেটা ন্যান্সি যেটা সেকেন্ড ওয়েভ বললেন, সেটাই তো সবচাইতে বিপদের কারণ, যে এখন এই যে ইকোনমিটাকে আবার ট্রাম্প এবং তার লোকেরা জোরজার করে খুলে দিচ্ছে, তাতে যে অবস্থাটা একটুখানি ভালোর দিকে যাচ্ছিল, আবার সামনে কয়েক মাসের মধ্যে আবার নতুন করে মৃত্যুর হার এবং সংক্রমণের হার প্রচন্ডভাবে বেড়ে যাবে, এ বিষয়ে কোনো সন্দেহ নেই। আজকে নিউ ইয়র্কের গভর্নর এবং নিউ ইয়র্ক শহরের মেয়র তারা কিছুটা লিবারাল মাইন্ডেড, প্রোগ্রেসিভ মাইন্ডেড হওয়ার কারণে এখানে খুব জোর করে একটা মানে ইয়ে করে লকডাউনটা যতটা সম্ভব করেছে, যদিও সাধারণ মানুষের মধ্যে অনেকেই মানছে না, কিন্তু তাও একটা মোটামুটি ভাবে স্কুল টুল বন্ধ, কলেজ বন্ধ, বিভিন্ন জায়গাতে বন্ধ থাকার কারণে এখানে একটা অবস্থাটা একটুখানি ভালোর দিকে যাচ্ছে। কিন্তু তুমি যদি সারা আমেরিকার হিসেবটা দেখো, তাহলে কালকে আমি একটা সময় পোস্ট করেছিলাম ফেসবুকে ৭৪,১২১ জন না কতজন মৃতের সংখ্যা দেখাচ্ছিল সারা আমেরিকায়। ১ ঘন্টা পরে সেটা বেড়ে গেছে ৭৪,৮৯১। ১ ঘন্টার মধ্যে সারা আমেরিকাতে, নিউ ইয়র্কে নয়, সারা আমেরিকাতে। ফলে আমরা একটা ভীষণ সংকটের মধ্যে আছি, কিন্তু এই সংকটের আসল কারণগুলো অনুসন্ধান করার দরকার আছে। সেই কথাগুলো ন্যান্সি পরিবেশের দিক থেকে, ক্লাইমেটের দিক থেকে কিছুটা বলেছেন, আর আমি অর্থনীতি এবং সমাজের দিক থেকে, রাজনীতির দিক থেকে আমি বলে যাচ্ছি। এই আলোচনাটা আমাদের চালিয়ে যেতে হবে।
একদম
তুমি
একদম চালাবো আমরা আলোচনা।
তার জন্য ধন্যবাদ।
ধন্যবাদ দাদা, আবার আসবেন। আর ভিউয়ার্সদের বলবো, কিছুটা ইনফরমেশন আপনারা পেয়েছেন, আমরা আবার বিভিন্ন বিষয় নিয়ে আমরা ফিরছি। পার্থবাবুকে অনেক ধন্যবাদ, তারও মানে অনেকটাই সময় আমরা ব্যয় করলাম। ভারতের সঙ্গে অনেকটাই দূরত্ব মার্কিন যুক্তরাষ্ট্র, কিন্তু কতটা কাছে আমরা, আজকে এটা প্রমাণ হলো। ক্রাইসিস সব জায়গায় এক, লড়াইটাও খুব কঠিন, লড়াইটাও চলছে ঐক্যবদ্ধভাবে। ধন্যবাদ, ধন্যবাদ পার্থদা, ভালো থাকবেন, আপনারাও সুস্থ থাকবেন, ভালো থাকবেন।